Hi everyone, okay, this is Sergei Smagin against Dragutin Sahovic, which was played at the BL Open tournament in 1990. They're both top GMs, and it was an interesting game for a few reasons. Firstly, it was an opening that's rarely played at top level. Smagin was white, and he played e4, and Sahovic replied with knight c6, and after d4 came d5, which is the Nimzowitch Defence, named after Nimzowitch, the great chess player and author. But it's uncommon, at top level. It's pretty rare to see, but it led to a great game anyway. After e5 came bishop f5, which is just developing the bishop outside of the pawn chain, because e6 we played in a second, and it's similar to the Caro-Kann, and it just liberates the bishop before closing up the pawns. So c3 and e6. And then just really normal developing moves with knight d2, f6, f4, f takes c5, f takes c5, knight h6, because it can't come to f6 of course, so it just wants to develop it after knight df3 to f7, and then knight e2, bishop e7, knight g3, trying to win the bishop pair, and bishop g4, which probably wasn't the best move. Sahovic was probably worried about, say if he plays bishop g6, and after h4, with threats of trapping the bishop here, he could just castle, and he's got a good lead in development. If white had played h5, then bishop e4 is okay, because if knight takes e4, then after d takes e4, the knight has to move, say h2, then bishop to h4 check. Black would have a strong advantage, so it's okay, but maybe he was worried about losing the bishop pair or that kind of thing, and he instead played bishop g4, which is pinning the knight as well, so he's got a couple of ideas in mind. And then came bishop d3 and knight g5, just trying to add pressure to the pinned knight, but here Smagin came up with a brilliant move, and if you want to try and stop it, or spot it, sorry, then stop the video now. Okay, what he played was knight takes g5, which is a queen sacrifice, and it's much stronger and more forceful than, say, bishop takes g5, because after bishop takes g5 and castling, white's still better because black's bishops are awkwardly placed, but the queen sacrifice is far stronger. So knight takes g5, and then of course bishop takes d1, and then knight takes d6, threatening the queen. So the queen has to move, and it goes to b8, which is really the best retreating square for the queen. If instead, say for example, it goes to d7, then knight takes g7 check, and after king d8, which is really the best move for the king, then bishop f5 would trap the queen anyway. So queen b8 is the best square. And then comes knight takes g7 check, king d8, and king takes d1. So at this position now, white has a bishop, a knight, and two pawns for his queen, and his position is much better than black's, whose pieces are just doing nothing. They're not even beyond the third rank, and all his heavy pieces are just completely stuck behind the pawns, and also his king is permanently exposed. So it's very good compensation for the queen, and Fritz gives an advantage for white already. And here Sahovic played b5, which was just trying to liberate the queen down the b file somehow maybe. But then came knight to e6 check, king c8, and knight f5, and already white's pieces are just marching down the board, and black's already under pressure. At the moment his bishop is challenged, and he didn't want to lose it because it's guarding these important dark squares here. So bishop f8 was played, which is back to its starting square, but there was no better move. Like if for example queen b6, then simply knight e3 will win the d5 pawn, so it's no good. So bishop f8 is preserving that dark squared bishop. And then came rook f1 and king b7, from Sahovic, again trying to liberate the queen along the first rank here, but Smagin was quick to stop that with bishop h6, which is another strong move, and has in mind winning the c5 square for his knight here, which would prove strong, and it does in the game, as you'll see. So here Sahovic took the bishop anyway, which is really the strongest possible move. Like, another candidate is king b6 instead, but then white's got a couple of winning continuations. One is knight takes f8 simply, and after rook takes f8 bishop takes f8, and after queen takes f8 knight e3 attacking the queen, so queen g8 and rook f6 is winning for white. But there's a stronger continuation than that. After king b6 here, there's knight e3 would be much stronger. After bishop takes h6, then knight takes d5 check, and king b7 is the only square to avoid the mate. Like, if for example king a5, then b4 check, then it's mate in 6. Say king a4 and then a3, simply with the threat of bishop c2, which would be mate. So king b3 and then knight c5 check, king b2, rook f2 check, leaving this rook on pre, but it's okay because after king takes a1, which is the only move, then knight b3 check, mate is winning. So king b7 has to be played, but then there's knight c5 check, and after king c8 rook f7 with just massive threats. So after rook f8 then bishop f5 check, king d8, rook d7 check, king e8. It's just absolutely crushing for white and easily winning. So it's best at this stage to take the bishop, and that's what Sahovic played. And then came knight c5 check, so the c5 square is liberated for the knight because the defense that the bishop was providing for it is gone. And king c8, so the queen again is stopped from coming into the game. And then Smagin got his material back, and then knight to e7 and bishop e2, which is just aiming for the h3 c8 diagonal, which will be lethal. And here it's totally winning for white, and Sahovic made matters worse for himself with knight g6, because then came knight f7, and here black resigned because there's no way to deal with the twin threat of knight takes h8 and bishop g4, which would be mate. Say for example if he plays c6 here, then knight takes h8 simply. If knight takes h8, then rook f8 check, king c7, knight to a6 check, king b7, knight takes b8, rook takes b8, and it's curtains. So that's it, a brilliant game from Smagin. I'll replay it with the threatened squares highlighted, just so you can see the whole thing through. Here we go. Yeah, so it was a Nimzowitch Defence, and it's rare enough at top level, you know. Maybe it was a preparation by Sahovic, but it went badly wrong. Maybe he hadn't considered these lines. I mean, usually against e4 you'd expect, well, the Sicilian or the French, maybe the Caro-Kann, but yeah, the Nimzowitch is a rare one. But yeah, there was the queen sack anyway, and brilliant calculating skills that, you know, he can see that in every continuation he's better after losing his queen. This goes to show position means a lot more than material, and the queen just does nothing, it's trapped. And that's it, that's the final position. So hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.